Hello everyone. In this video we're going to look at ordering flex items. So let's get to it. So up until now, the ordering of items has been based on one thing, and that is where the item is positioned in the DOM. I.e. we have a flex container here representing this first box, and we can see item 1 is the first child. As a result of that, it is the first item in the list here, and it's the closest to the main starting position. You can see item 4 here, though, is the last item in the list, so as a result, it's the furthest away from the main starting position. So just to demonstrate that that's actually the case, if I remove the item from the start and place it at the very end and save, you will now see item number 1 is at the very last position, right? So we can change ordering, obviously, if we change the DOM. However, that may not always be the situation that we want, i.e. we may not always have control of being able to change how the HTML is represented. So as a result of this, Flexbox created a property called the order property for flex items. So the order property is assigned to each item, or any item, depending on how you want to set it up. And the value of order is 0 by default, meaning we don't really have an order, just use the order that's in the list here. So to demonstrate that, I'm just going to create a CSS class here called .defaultOrder, which is one of the classes I gave to that very first container there. And we're going to apply a rule to every item. And I'm going to set the order here to 0. And if I save that, we can see we get no change over here. So the order stays as intended. Now, once again, if I come over and I cut this out and I put it at the very end and save, you'll see number 1 once again goes to the very end. And that's because every item has an equal ordering position, all right? So how do we actually use the order property to change the ranking of the items? It's based on numerical value, so it can be any number you want, but the lower the number of an item is, the closer to the main starting position the item will appear, and the higher the order number is, the further away from the main starting position an item will appear. So an example of this is, say I want to, for this second container, push the 4th item to the very front, all right? How do I do that? Well, I've created a selector or a class on that container called last to first. And I'm going to affect the very last item. And to do that, you just go last of type, like so. So I'm grabbing the very last item in that second container. And I'm going to say, because all the order values are defaulted to 0, I'm going to set this one to -1. All right, so it's lower than all the others. So if I save that, and we can now see item number 4 is now at the very front. And that's because it has a lower order value than the rest of the items in this container. Now, also, for another example, if I say I want number 1 to now appear at the end, all right, we have to give a higher value. So here's another selector I have, first to last. So this will affect the 3rd container. And I'm going to grab the first of type this time. You go order is 1. All right, so it's higher than 0, so it's higher than the rest of the items inside of the container here. So 2, 3, and 4 will stay in that order, but 1 will now appear at the end. So if I save it, you can now see the number 1 has jumped to the end here. So that's the basics of how we can move things around. Now we'll just have a couple more examples. Basically, we used 1 and -1 so far just to shuffle things around. But the number really doesn't matter as long as it's lower than everything else. So say I want to, for this box here, I want to move all even numbers to the front, but I want the 4 to appear before the 2. All right, how can we do that? Well, I just give a lower value for 2 and 4 than 1 and 3. So in this case, I'll probably leave 1 and 3 as 0. And 2 and 4 would be some value that's lower than that. And then, because 4 in the current ordering is higher than 2 by default, I have to give 4 a lower value than 2. Okay, so let's see how that works. So if I go dot even to front, which is the class I've given to that container, and I'm going to go item, and I'm going to specify nth of type even. So we're grabbing all the even items in that list. I'm going to set the order value to something here like -10. All right, if I save that and we look at what we've got, we now see items 2 and 4 now appear before 1 and 3. Okay, so that's half the battle done. We've got the even numbers before the odd numbers. However, I said I want to have 4 before 2. So currently these two values have an order value of -10, but 4 needs to have a order number lower than -10. So once again, I can create a similar selector to the one I have up here, copy and paste, and then rename to even to front. So we've got the right container here, even to front. I'm going to say last of type, and because we know it's -10, I'm going to specify this as -11. I'm going to save that. We're now going to see the 4 has pushed to the front, okay? i.e. it has a lower order value than the second item. So therefore, it appears closer to the main starting position. And that's the other thing that you have to remember, is that based on the direction of the main axes, whenever we have a lower order number, it will try to stay at the main starting position. And if it's a higher number, it will appear towards the main end position as far as it can go. Okay? So just keep that in mind. And finally, for this last one, we're going to do something a little bit funky. We're going to put the third item first, followed by the first item to be second, followed by the fourth item to be third, and then last, we're going to put the second item as the very last option. Okay? Now, I've called this the jumbled container. So we go dot jumbled. All right. Now, I want to put the third item first. So to do that, I just go item, and we go nth of type. And I'm going to specify 3 here because we're talking the third item. And then I'm going to go order. And I'm going to set it to -2 for now. And the reason why I do that is because I want to have 1 before the value of 4, which we'll keep as 0. So I've got -2 for the third one. And then rather than... actually, we'll run it right now and just save and make sure that the 3 goes to the front. And it does. Now for 1, I could leave it as is. Essentially we can do that. But I'm going to explicitly set it here just for interest's sake. And I'm going to actually set them all explicitly just to indicate that it works. So for the second one, the first item, we're going to put that in the second position. So jumbled.item first of type. All right, I'm going to set that order to be -1. And when I save that, we get no change. So the item now has been explicitly set to be the second lowest value of all the values currently. So that's why it's in the second position. And now for the fourth item, which we're saying we want to have as the third position, last of type. Order I'm going to set here to 0, even though that's the current value. All right, so I'll save that. And nothing changes. And the reason why nothing changes is because the second item is still got a value of 0. So therefore, physically in the DOM, it's before the 4. So that's why it appears before it. So as a result of that, in fact, I typed it wrong up here too, which doesn't help my case. Jumbled and item nth of type 2. So we're grabbing the second item, and I'm going to set that to an order of 1, meaning it's going to be the very last option. Now, if I've done all this right now and I save, we now get the ordering that we expect. Item 3 is first, item 1 is second, item 4 is third, and item 2 is last. Now, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover in this video. So in the next video, we're going to look at how we deal with sizing of flex items. So I'll see you then.